Why Bob's Burgers? Bob's Burgers is an American animated sitcom created by Loren Bouchard for the Fox Broadcasting Company. The series centers on the Belcher family, parents Bob and Linda and their 3 children, Tina, Jean, and Louise, who run a hamburger restaurant. On the surface, that seems like the most boring template to build a show upon. But the genius of Bob's Burgers is how they manage to tackle complex concepts of childhood, family, poverty, and success or lack thereof. And one way or another flow all of that to a happy ending. Maybe the magic isn't in the happy ending, but their ability to make it feel deserved. There are plenty of shows out there that will tie the narrative at the end of the episode into an acceptable conclusion, but to me it never hits as realistically as Bob's Burgers. Whether you take the newer episodes of The Simpsons where I can always, a turning point coming where the resolution of the episode starts, or the fresh wave of modern, cinematic TV shows that take the courage to abandon happy endings altogether, something about the way Bob's Burgers approaches conflict and resolution has really resonated with me over the years. Let me explain. Take Bob for example. On the surface one could conclude that he's a terrible parent because his life shows no signs of prosperity or success, at least in contemporary terms. When you closely observe the way Bob's character on the show was written and the way it was voiced by the incredible voice actor, something magical starts to happen. You start to realize that at the core, Bob is not a bad person. And this is an interesting perspective because how can you even distinguish between a bad and a good person? I mean, we have problems to separate the black and white. Is that in real life as well? You see, Bob isn't a good person because of all the things he has achieved. Quite the contrary, in fact. He hasn't achieved anything in life. His restaurant is failing. His best friend or only friend on a regular basis is a customer. His kids are always getting in trouble, and he's always one step away from breaking apart financially. All of this should conclude that Bob is a failure. That he is a bad parent. But I guess the question is, does failure conclude ethics? It's when you question the distinction between those two concepts, you start to realize that Bob is great. Not because what he has done, but because of what he has avoided and stood up for. The show has made it quite clear that Bob makes incredible burgers. In one of the earlier episodes of the show, when Bob was a teenager and his father, who also owns a restaurant, wanted to start a business with him, he shows incredible courage and self-worth and rejects his father's proposition. In that one moment, he shows more self-confidence and self-worth in his actions than perhaps the rest of his life in the show. Is he bad for outright rejecting his own father? Perhaps it wasn't so outright. His father is depicted as someone who is overly critical of Bob and constantly trying to micromanage him. This is where Bob shows incredible wisdom for his age by recognizing that his father is wrong. Some of us take lifetimes to realize that our parents aren't perfect and that they make mistakes, and it takes your courage to stand up against them. Bob isn't afraid in this moment. He shows more conviction in himself and his skill than I think I ever have. Once Bob separates, the road isn't particularly easy for him either. He meets Linda and has 3 children, all the while never making it big or even comfortably successful for that matter. But then I ask if his burgers are good, and if he's a good person, what's preventing him from hitting big? The answer is himself. In one of the episodes, Bob enters a contest with his neighbor/arch-enemy, who is another fellow restaurateur, and another contestant who is an international celebrity chef. The writing incredibly flows the narrative through the characters. The judges choose the celebrity chef as a winner, but the celebrity chef chooses Bob's Burger as the star of the contest. This really makes you wonder how much of our self-worth should come from someone else's judgment, because it can easily be swayed by tangible concepts like your status or your money. The show also had a parallel narrative about Jean learning responsibility, which in and itself is incredible cause of the light writing yet heavy-hitting concept within the episode. The characters of the show are so well written that I feel like I could write hours on end on each character individually. Bob isn't perfect, however. In fact, it's one of the running jokes of the show how he calls his entire family terrible in everything they do, but he quickly apologizes or shows that he doesn't mean it. Well, a little bit sometimes. You see, this is the reason why Bob is great. Since very early age he knew that he had a skill, but in pursuit of the calling of his life, all he saw was setbacks after setbacks, and this is where the show begins. Literally in episode 1, Bob is standing out of the restaurant talking to his own reflection in the broken window, and in his own words he says, "You're a failure. You failed. You fail at everything. You fail at marriage. You fail at family. Your kids are failures. And you're fat. You're not attractive. You never were. Well, you were a little bit when you were a teenager. But then you got fat." This simple line of dialogue conveys one of the toughest feats of being human: courage. The ability to see yourself for who you really are. Some of us, or at least I, often get stuck into this narrative that I am doing everything I can. But the world keeps defeating me, and so my failures are justified. And this very narrative prevents us from intuitively working on them, because we feel justified. Why have a goal in life when the world is just gonna pull you down any? Why have a dream when more likely than not it's going to get crushed anyway? Why care about anything when nothing matters anyway? Right? Wrong? As a psychology student, if I know anything about how the mind works, then that is that it always needs a narrative in order to accept the unknown. At the end of the day, the decision is in our hands to choose that narrative. As the world has grown and connected, and the pool of knowledge and information has spiraled out of hand, the easiest narrative for all of us to accept has become this idea that nothing matters. It's once that we accept this narrative that you achieve a small sense of peace in the moment, but it only grows hollower with days and months and years, and we start to believe that in this cursed reality of nothing matters, peace is an illusion, contentment is a hoax, and happiness is a product because nothing matters, right? The truth is, we don't really know. No one does. We just accept it to survive the moment. Happiness doesn't exist in the future because we don't even know if the future exists in the future. This is where Bob is not one of us. This is where Bob is a great person. It's only when we can accept that we also contribute vastly in our own misfortunes is when we start to realize that the outside world is always going to try to defeat us. Not because it wants to, but because it exists.